Shalom. This week we are reading Parashat Naso, the second Torah portion in the book of Bamidbar, Numbers. So let me ask you a personal question, if you don't mind. Are you a middle-of-the-road type of person, or do you tend towards the extreme? I'm not talking about your politics. I'm talking about your spiritual life. That question forms the backdrop of an unusual commandment that we encounter in this week's Torah portion, and that is the concept of the Nazarites, one who declares a Nazirite vow of abstention. This is a unique vow whose details are found in the beginning of chapter 6 of our Parsha, as follows. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, a man or woman who shall disassociate himself by taking a Nazirite vow of abstinence for the sake of Hashem, he shall abstain from new wine and aged wine. He shall not drink even vinegar made from new wine or aged wine, nor shall he drink anything in which grapes have been steeped, and he shall eat neither fresh grapes nor dried ones. For the entire duration of his abstinence, he shall not eat any product of the grapevine from seeds to skins. All the days of his vow of abstinence, no razor shall pass over his head, until the completion of the term that he abstains for the sake of Hashem. It shall be sacred, and he shall allow the growth of the hair of his head to grow wild. All the days that he abstains for Hashem, he shall not come into contact with the dead, to his father, or to his mother, to his brother, to his sister. He shall not defile himself if they die, for the crown of his God is upon his head. For the entire duration of his abstinence, he is holy to Hashem." And there are more verses as well. So a Nazarite, called in Hebrew a Nazir, is a man or a woman who has accepted upon themselves the prohibitions of the Nazarite by making a vow. The vow is made according to a certain formula. For example, as our sages clarify in the oral tradition, an individual can initiate the state of Nazir with a simple declaration, Hareini Nazir, meaning, behold, I am a Nazir, or with a number of other sentences that reflect his desire to do this. And there are many details and rules that pertain to all this. There's an entire section of Mishnah and Talmud called Tractate Nazir that deals with all the issues. But according to the verses in our Parsha, the main prohibitions, the extras normally permitted by the Torah for most people, which he or she takes upon themselves, are not to drink wine or consume grapes or any of their components, hair cutting or shaving the hair of the head, and the prohibition of coming in contact with the dead. Maintaining purity from death at all times, as we have learned previously, is a conduct generally observed only by Kohanim, the priests who serve in the Holy Temple. So how long does this self-imposed period of extra abstinence last? For how long does a person become a Nazir? The Nazir usually takes upon himself this stringent code of behavior for a certain limited period of time. Unless otherwise specified, the default time frame for the period of Nazirite abstention and the minimum period that one could actually be a Nazir is 30 days. However, it could also be for a different amount of time or for successive 30-day periods. And there's also such a thing as a person vowing to be a Nazir for all one's life. At the conclusion of the period of the Nazarite's time of abstinence, before that which he had forbidden for himself can once again be reinstated, he has several obligations to fulfill. He's to bring 3 offerings: a sheep for an olah, burnt offering, a ewe as a sin offering, and a ram as a peace offering, together with a basket of unleavened loaves, loaves of fine flour mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers smeared with oil, and their meal offerings and their libations, exactly as we read here in the 6th chapter of our Parsha. After these offerings are brought, he is to cut his hair within a special chamber in the Holy Temple called the Chamber of the Nazarites, and his hair is to be burned in the fire under the pot in which the meat of his peace offering is cooked. Afterwards, the Kohen, the attending temple priest, takes 1 loaf and 1 unleavened wafer, together with a portion of the thigh of the ram, and waves them together with the Nazir as a wave offering. After this is accomplished, the Nazarite is released from his vow, and that which had been forbidden is now permitted again. Now, at various times throughout history, there were many Nazarites, and it wasn't such an unusual thing to make such a vow of abstention. While Samson is the only Nazarite identified in the Tanakh by name, it would seem that it was a popular practice in those days. as evidenced by verses such as Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 7 in reference to the citizens of Jerusalem, where it states, "Her Nazarites were purer than snow, they were whiter than milk, their appearance was ruddier than coral, and sapphire was their form." And Samuel the prophet is also alluded to as being a Nazir from birth, like Samson, as the verse would seem to indicate in Samuel 1, chapter 1 and verse 11, "And no razor shall come upon his head." And our sages indicate that Avshalom, King David's son, was also Nazir. Now today, because the Holy Temple has not yet been rebuilt, the necessary offerings which are mandated by Torah to be brought at the conclusion of the period of abstinence upon which the release of the vow are dependent cannot be brought. Thus, an individual who would take on a Nazirite vow today for a limited period of time cannot end it. For this reason today, in general, the Nazirite vow is not in practice, for the state of abstinence and things forbidden would have to continue for the duration of the Nazir's life. Furthermore, because of tumat met, the spiritual state of impurity caused by death and our lack of ability to purify from it at present without the ashes of the red heifer, because this state is considered to be all-pervasive and all is affected by this, the Nazirite vows are not generally practiced. Still, there is no halacha against it in our time to declare oneself a Nazirite, even with the absence of the Holy Temple. It's not forbidden by Jewish law. And through the ages, and indeed in modern times as well, there have been individuals who have taken the Nazirite vow. One of the most famous of which was Rabbi David Cohen of blessed memory, who passed away in 1972, who was known as the Nazir of Jerusalem. He was a famous student of Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cohen Cook, who at one point made such a vow and remained a Nazir for the rest of his life. So, an important question, the word itself, what does Nazir mean? According to Rashi, citing from the Sifri, the word throughout the Torah consistently means abstention. That is to say, this person is called Nazir because he or she abstains from wine. Alternatively, and this will have a really interesting implication for us, according to Rav Hirsch, for example, it's not abstention that characterizes the Nazir, but separation from other people. The Nazarite is stunningly separated and elevated above other people who are caught up in their physical desires and rooted in their physicality. So Rav Hirsch suggests that the Nazir is like a king with a crown, differentiated, separate from other people. As in the translation of verse 7, which we read, the Nazir, the crown of God, is upon his head. See, the root of the word Nazir also denotes a crown. And we realize that this individual man or woman who chooses to undertake a Nazirite vow has made a dramatic life decision by accepting on themselves the extra prohibitions, the gravity of the conduct of the Nazirite. Tell me something. Why does he or she do it? You know, there's one thing that the verses in the Torah in this week's portion do not specify, and that is why. Why does this person take on this vow of abstention and separation? What's the motivation? The verse says that he abstains for Hashem. Now, while the verses don't provide a reason, our sages relate to the question in the oral tradition. Most famously, there is an emphasis in our tradition on the proximity in Parashat Naso of the Nazir to the Sota, the suspected adulteress, the subject which immediately precedes the verses of the Nazir. We are taught that a main factor in the Sota's actions which leads her to her adultery and to her undoing was wine. Her unraveling is traumatic to behold. The proximity of the two sections in the Parsha is explained by our sages in the words of this teaching. Whoever sees the Sota in her state of ruination will vow himself from the wine, so as to stay away from sin. So there is that. There is that implied, inferred connection, the illusion of the Sota as a chastising influence on this individual. And with the Torah's words, the descriptor that this person is abstaining for Hashem, we understand that this vow is somehow taken as an act of serving God. But an equally important question not addressed by our Parsha is, what is the Torah's attitude concerning such an individual? This Nazarite of our Parsha, is he or she holy in particular? Does their declaration of self-deprivation make them holier than thou? Or is this person perhaps considered to be a sinner, declaring for himself that which the Torah deemed permissible, is forbidden to him. Is this the ideal? To separate oneself and behave with austerity, refraining from partaking of some of the pleasures of this world completely? Indeed, if this is the ideal, why doesn't the Torah command us all to be Nazarites? For example, why doesn't the Torah forbid wine for everyone? Or is this maybe something only for certain people, maybe certain personality types, and at certain times? I'm asking. I want to explore this question. This is a person who is seeking to make a very definite statement regarding his or her position in the world and how they wish to see themselves. The renowned authority, the Sefer HaChinuch, explains that he's also required to grow his hair long because cutting the hair represents a concern with physical appearance, which is an offshoot of the haughtiness associated with the evil inclination. So if we were to attempt to put the Nazarite vow experience in the modern context of our own everyday lives, man or woman, would it be proper for us to adopt an approach to life that leans towards the extreme behavior of the Nazir, abstention, abstaining from that which is permitted? Is that Hashem's will? Or is he granting permission for those who would, let's say, are attracted to it? So the verses of the Torah themselves do not indicate this person standing in Hashem's eyes. And our sages are divided in their opinions. Some feel that the Nazarite vow is the advisable way to go for an individual who wants to serve God and draw close to him. As the Ibn Ezra explains, he should separate himself because the majority of the world follows after their desires. So this one vows to be a Nazir, and as the name denotes, he distances himself from physical desires. He does this to serve Hashem, because wine, for example, destroys awareness, destroys consciousness, and without proper mindfulness, one cannot properly serve Hashem. According to this approach, the Nazir is holy. Indeed, a statement in the Midrash Rabbah tells us the Nazir is considered to be like the high priest and is called holy. But there is another opposing viewpoint expressed by our sages, hinging on the verse, chapter 6 and verse 11, the Kohen shall prepare one for a sin offering and one for a burnt offering and atone on his behalf for having sinned regarding the person, and he shall sanctify his head on that day. What does he have to bring a sin offering for upon the conclusion of the Nazarite state? So the sage Rabbi Elazar Hakfar expounded on the verse, Tractate Nidarim, and he says, concerning this verse, and atone on his behalf for having sinned regarding the person. Regarding what person did he sin? And he answers, he afflicted himself by abstaining from wine. And of this individual who merely deprived himself of wine is called a sinner, how much more so one who abstains from all pleasures? States the Talmud from here, from the laws of the Nazir's sin offering, from here we learn that whoever fasts excessively is called a sinner. Rabbi Elazar seems to be saying that the abstention and separation are classified as no less of than a sin. And for this, the Nazarite is required by Torah to bring an offering. So his point being, this can't be the recommended path to serving Hashem. But the Torah is rather teaching us that there can be a singular person within the context of special situation, and such a person can recognize his own shortcomings, the areas that need fixing, and he can know exactly what issues face him, the places he needs to strengthen, the areas of his behavior on which he can count on himself. It was this type of person that was permitted to make a Nazarite vow of abstention. But he must remember that extra stringency is an emergency measure. It's not the sought-after or desired way of life, but only a means to reach a specific goal. If one thinks that the proper way of life should be through abstention and stringencies, then why didn't the Torah simply forbid these things for everyone? Thus we are taught regarding the Nazir, it is enough for you, it should be enough for you what the Torah forbade you, but you go and forbid things that are permitted. That's from Tractate Nidarim. And that's the key, I think, because the Torah does not preach asceticism as a way of life. Hashem does not want us to be ascetics, but to enjoy this world that He created. He wants us to serve Him by finding joy in everything in this world in proper measure and moderation, and by using it for Hashem, and thus elevating its spiritual essence. The word asceticism comes from a Greek word meaning exercise or training. Asceticism is a discipline that refers to a lifestyle characterized by abstinence from sensual pleasures, often for the purpose of pursuing spiritual goals. Ascetics may withdraw from the world for their practices or continue to be part of their society, but typically they adopt a frugal lifestyle characterized by the renunciation of material possessions and physical pleasures and time spent fasting while concentrating on the practice of religion or reflection upon spiritual matters. That, of course, is from Wikipedia, experts on asceticism. But this is really not the Torah's way for us. This is not a description of the lifestyle that Hashem requires of us. And thus, the Jerusalem Talmud in Tractate Chagiga makes a statement. This Torah is likened to two paths, one of fire and one of snow. Turning to one will cause death by fire, to the other, death by snow. And in that lesson, the sages conclude, what should one do? Walk in the middle. This is the golden path, which Maimonides writes should be a person's goal, path of moderation. This is why I asked you if you are a middle-of-the-road type of person. Our Torah teaches that the proper way of life is this middle path that the Rambam, the great Maimonides, speaks about, calling it the golden path of life. Now today especially, people don't even understand the difference between astringency and the actual law. And many times someone who's not strict is looked upon as less religious or as too light. But Hashem is not looking to punish us through our performance of His commandments. This whole issue is reminiscent of a similar question, the issue of excessive fasting that is discussed in the Talmud. Various opinions are cited regarding an individual who fasts excessively in addition to the community fast days. And in addition to those set days of community fasting, according to tradition, we should also fast in a time of crisis, and this goes for an individual as well. But what about a person who fasts very regularly as an act of extra piety? Is that a holy person or a sinner? Is extra fasting a mitzvah or is it forbidden? The issue at hand is not about fasting on a particular day, but the question of to what extent a person should enact a lifestyle of austerity and self-deprivation. Is this the way to godliness? So in the Talmud, Tractate Ta'anit, which deals with fasting, the sage Shmuel says that a person who sits and fasts constantly is called a sinner. And the sages explain that Shmuel's opinion is based on that of Rabbi Elazar HaKfar, who opines that a Nazir is a sinner because he abstains from wine. And the other sage, Rabbi Eliezer, disagrees and says that one who fasts is holy, although he also maintains that there are situations in which one shouldn't fast. Their controversy is in regard to a person who subjects himself to extra affliction reaching a level of extreme hunger. Maimonides, in his magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah, in a section called Hilchot, he expresses his opinion and approach to these questions. He asks, is it proper for a person to fast regularly as a means of serving God? A person might say, look at the world. And since jealousy, desire, and honor, and the like are all destructive traits for a person and shorten life, I will isolate myself from all of this and take the other extreme. I won't even eat meat or drink wine. I won't marry. I won't live in a nice place. I won't wear nice clothes. I'll wear harsh sackcloth like the pagan ascetics. Rambam says this too is an evil path forbidden for a person. And whoever does so would be called a sinner. For regarding the Nazarite, the Torah states, and atone on his behalf for having sinned regarding the person. And our sages taught, if regarding the Nazir who only separated himself from drinking wine, he needs atonement, how much more so a person who denies himself everything. Thus our sages instructed that a person should only limit himself to those things that the Torah itself withholds. Well, that's pretty clear. In this halakha, the Rambam decides, like Shmuel, that a person who afflicts himself is indeed called a sinner. Maimonides bases his decision on the teachings of our sages regarding the Nazir of our Torah portion. And Maimonides also quotes in this section King Solomon, the wisest of all men, who states in Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, chapter 7, verse 16, don't be overly righteous. In Hebrew, al tihiyet tzadik harbe, which literally means, don't be such a tzaddik. The Rambam in Hilchot Deot further states, what is the cure for a person with an anger problem? He should conduct himself in this manner. If he's struck or cursed, he should not react at all. He should act this way for a long time, until the anger is uprooted from his heart, until his haughtiness is uprooted. And then he can return to the middle path, which is the good way. And he should go that way all his life, and so too with all his attributes. If he finds that according to his personality, he consistently leans to one extreme, let him conduct himself for a little while in the other extreme, until he succeeds in getting back to the middle. So too, if he develops a problematic extreme desire, he should temporarily pursue extreme separation and fast in order to get back to the middle path. So, in conclusion, according to Maimonides, the way that is fitting for a person to go is the middle path, in his temperament, which the Rambam calls his midot, as well as in his actions. One should not add to the list of that which the Torah forbids. Thus, one should not fast regularly as a focus in life in addition to the appointed fasts, other than occasional fasts on account of extenuating difficult circumstances, such as a time of calamity as required, or, as Maimonides explains, if one sees that his desires are getting the better of him to the extreme, should separate himself in an extreme manner, temporarily, as a device that will aid in returning to the middle path. Acts of special piety are okay occasionally, but we can't kid ourselves. It's not a way of life. It's just not necessary. As we learned in the context of Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's two sons who perished when they brought an unauthorized fire before Hashem because they wanted to remain exhilarated and feel holy and close to Him. If you really want to feel especially close to Hashem, just do what He says. That would be fantastic. So what about this Nazir? Well, I think we've seen that forbidding extra things to ourselves and being stringent is a way of sanctification, and it could be called holy. And it could return us to the straight and narrow, but it's not God's ideal, nor is it His idea. And it's important to remember that it would only be a means to an end. When it comes to being in this world, this beautiful world, and finding Hashem in it, and serving Him in this very world which He placed us in to enjoy, you could be a Nazir for a little while. But the Torah teaches us to strive to walk in the middle path, the golden path of moderation.